willkommen zu einer neuen Ausgabe von Almost Daily. Heute mit einem Gast aus England. Nick Pope ist bei uns. Spricht nur Englisch, deshalb werde ich jetzt gleich auf die englische Sprache umswitchen. Nur, dass ihr schon mal wisst, wir reden über UFOs, denn Nick Pope ist Ufo-Experte, unter anderem Ufologe, hat fürs Ministry of Defense in England gearbeitet und kennt sich also sehr gut aus mit all diesen Themen, auch mit Conspiracy Theories, also mit Verschwörungstheorien und so weiter und so fort. Dennis und ich, wir haben uns vorbereitet, wir finden das Thema nämlich super spannend. Wir haben ja auch schon mal über Aliens geredet und sind jetzt sehr froh, einen Mann wirklich vom Fach zu haben, der schon sehr viel erlebt hat. Der hat
also es ist der Mann eigentlich. Er wird tatsächlich auch in der Welt der echte Fox Mulder genannt, weil er nicht nur als Vorlage dient für ganz viele Sachen, er ist Consultant, er arbeitet quasi bei allem mit, er schreibt Bücher, genau.
Er hat in Oxford, in Cambridge schon vorgetragen und so weiter. Also er ist wirklich ein Certified, how do you say, not gangster, but certified UFO expert. Welcome to the show, Nick Pope.
Thank you.
We just started with a little bit introduction. I don't know if you understood what we said, but it's true what we said, right? From the pieces that you heard.
I heard you talk about the X-Files and about debates at Oxford and Cambridge before you called me a gangster, I think.
Which you are, of course, as well. But you're mainly here because you're an UFO expert and you worked for the British government UFO project. In German we say Ufo because we're lazy and we don't pronounce every letter for itself. The UFO project, could you just give us a glimpse of what this UFO project actually is or was? I don't know.
Sure. Well, the British government had investigated UFOs since the 50s. Okay. And we basically treated it as a defense and a national security issue. If there were things in our airspace, we wanted to know who they were, what they were doing. You know, is it the Russians or is it someone else? Yeah. And particularly, of course, when these things were being seen by pilots, tracked on radar, it was more than just someone telling a story. So we used to investigate the case, and my job was to see whether anything that we looked at suggested a potential threat to our defense, or something that might teach us something interesting, some new scientific knowledge, perhaps.
So the sightings of UFOs is like a huge phenomenon around the world for ages, I would say. Simple question, can so many people be wrong about a thing? Do they actually want to believe what they see, or did they really see what they are saying?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. This is a global phenomenon, and people have seen strange things in the sky since the dawn of time. Most of them, of course, turn out to have natural explanations. These days, aircraft, satellites, meteors, weather balloons, all those sorts of things. But you know, what I always used to remind myself at the Ministry of Defense was that the believers only had to be right one time, and everything changes. So it was important that we eliminated all the misidentifications and the hoaxes and concentrated on the few good cases, and it was interesting.
I read one question. I read in your biography on your website that at first you were skeptical about UFOs and everything. That reads to me like you're not skeptical anymore.
I'm less skeptical. I think I'm certain that there is life out there in the universe. I don't know for sure whether any of that life is visiting us. I hope it is. I think it would be a much more interesting world with aliens in than without. But I can't say that I have seen anything which I would say is definitive, final proof that we're being visited. But, you know, I can't rule it out, and some of the UFO cases really do, I think, make some interesting suggestions in that direction.
Maybe we can stick to a well-known phenomenon, the Roswell Incident. What happened there exactly? I think everybody knows it. Roswell in the 60s, I think it was, and there came something down. And the military says it was a weather balloon, but the whole world thinks there was a UFO. I think you know exactly what happened there. Can you tell us today?
I'm not sure I do, but it was actually 1947, and sorry, but something crashed. Nobody disputes that. Something crashed. The really interesting thing about Roswell is that it wasn't the media or UFO experts, that there really wasn't anything like that. There was no such thing as a ufologist back then. It wasn't them that made this claim. The first people to say, we've found something unusual and interesting, were the military themselves. And they put the story out. We have recovered one of these, and they called it a flying disc, that has been seen throughout America over the recent weeks and months. Well, we have found one. We've got it. 24 hours later, they changed their story and said, we've made a terrible mistake. It was just a weather balloon. Well, Roswell was the only atomic bomb capable squadron anywhere in the world at the time. These were the elite military. And they tested weather balloons down there all the time. These people knew what a crashed weather balloon looked like. So it's not very likely that they would misidentify just bits of a weather balloon and say, hey, we've got a flying disc. So something is very strange there. But the problem is that it's now over 66 years in the past. Most, if not all, of the witnesses are dead. Some of the original documents have been lost or destroyed, and the Americans, if they know the truth of what happened there, I'm afraid they didn't tell us British. Even though we're supposed to be close allies and friends.
Exactly. I thought you share everything, like information about the whole world and stuff.
Not that. They haven't told us any great secrets about UFOs.
But there were a similar incident, which is called in America the Bentwaters incident, which was also a crash site, I think, discovered by military people. Could you elaborate on that?
This is Britain's most famous UFO case, and this is from December 1980. And in fact, it's believed that the object didn't crash, but it actually landed.
Okay.
And these were American military bases in Britain, and some of the military personnel, they saw strange lights in the forest by the base. They thought that maybe an aircraft had crashed. They went out to investigate, and in a small clearing in the forest, they found a sort of small triangular-shaped craft, which was on 3 legs. It stayed there for some time. One of the witnesses got close enough to see strange symbols on the side, like Egyptian hieroglyphs, and he sketched the craft and these symbols. Then this thing took slowly off above the ground, cleared the trees, and then shot off at immense speed. Now later, they went back to the site where this thing had landed, and they found 3 holes in the ground where huge weight had pressed down, where this thing was. The insides of the trees around this clearing were scorched and burnt, and when they searched, they put a Geiger counter and checked for radiation, and they found that the levels were 7 or 8 times the normal. And this was an official assessment done by the Defense Intelligence staff at the Ministry of Defense. 2 days later, the UFO came back, and the witnesses on that occasion, where it didn't land, but it was up in the sky, performing extraordinary speeds and maneuvers. The witnesses included the Deputy Base Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, and at one point the UFO fired a narrow beam of light down at the ground in front of him and his men, and he said he didn't know what to make of this. Was it a weapon? Was it a warning? Was it communication? He didn't know. but an absolutely extraordinary case.
But if that's the case with the case, so this actually happened and it's verified that this happened, then I'm wondering why isn't this, I don't know, why isn't this bigger than, why do I have to read on your website about it and have never heard it before? Because actually there seemed to be, there was an UFO. It was witnessed by people from the government. It's an assessment. So there you have it. It's proof.
Yes.
Well,
I mean, I agree with you. It's frustrating why this case isn't better known. I think maybe the media and the public can only really handle one big case at a time, and at the moment it's Roswell. But like I say, Roswell is pretty soon going to be 70 years old, and I think this Bentwaters incident, we sometimes call it the Rendlesham Forest incident, I think this is going to be the new Roswell. Yeah. And we know that there was a conspiracy because the government's own documents show that shortly afterwards the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Air Force in Europe, General Gabriel, visited the base, took possession of items of evidence and removed them to his headquarters. And he didn't even tell the British government about this. Now the papers have recently been declassified and you can read them. They're the government's own documents, and it shows how angry we in the Ministry of Defense were with the Americans for taking this evidence away and not telling us what was going on, what they had found. Very annoying.
If there has really been an UFO with 3 legs and was landing in the woods or somewhere else, another UFO was doing strange things, what do you think if some of these incidents really happened? What would the government do with the stuff they find?
Well, I can understand. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am a great believer in open government and freedom of information. But I can understand. I mean, I worked in that secret world for 21 years and 3 years on the UFO project, other jobs too, of course, in my government career. I think they would keep it secret if they could. And I think the reason for that has to do with technology acquisition. Because if these things really are from somewhere else, clearly there is a technology there many times more advanced than anything we've got. Energy source, propulsion system, maybe even weapons. And the country on Earth that first acquires that technology is going to have a huge advantage politically, militarily, economically, and that, I believe, is the reason for the secrecy.
And shouldn't they have this advantage by now?
Well, you know, alien technology, if it exists, may be incredibly difficult to figure out. Imagine if a stealth fighter somehow went back in time and crashed 300 years ago. Would the finest minds on the planet even really know what it was, let alone be able to put it back together and start building them? Yeah. So even if Roswell was an alien spacecraft, and even if we have it all in an aircraft hangar somewhere, you know.
A couple of weeks ago we had a talk here and we talked about aliens and alien life forms. And I raised a question that still is unanswered to this day. Not that the discussion went on, but it's still unanswered. And that's always when it comes to UFOs and aliens, we as humans always think of this higher species that's much more developed and has technology that we can only dream of. But I'm also a believer that there are life forms out there. It's ridiculous to think by this huge universe that we are the only living creatures. But what if we really are the smartest?
Well,
what if the aliens are stupider than us. No one ever comes up with that theory because it's boring. But maybe they're so stupid and they still have like wooden ships. What's about that?
Wooden spaceships.
Yes.
I think the problem with that, I think, is that if they can get here, because our technology is really only good enough to get us to the moon, to Mars, slowly.
But that's only traveling.
Yeah.
Maybe they're advanced in this one segment, traveling very far distance. They're super good in this department, but in everything else, they have never seen an apple or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand, and it's an interesting theory, and maybe that explains why, if we are being visited, they don't make contact, because maybe they look at things like our nuclear weapons and they think, my goodness, we don't want to mess with these guys.
Yes, exactly. Could be possible, right?
Yeah, and could be also be a very stupid theory.
But I have to say, yeah, I'm a little bit skeptical, because I think that you don't just need to be good at one thing to develop real interstellar travel. I think you need physics, you need engineering.
That's what we know about it.
Yeah.
But you don't know if on some alien planet, billions of light years away, they have all. Maybe that's just a fruit, like a powerful fruit that they put in their tank, and suddenly they can fly billions of light years. We don't know that.
We don't know, and you're certainly right. The problem with all of these discussions is that we can only take an anthropocentric view, so we can only really speculate, and we do it in cliches. We talk about alien invasion or an invitation to join the Galactic Federation. Maybe the reality is totally different, surreal, and nothing any of us has ever thought of.
I mean, take the cornfields. You know, the cornfields, the crop circles.
Yes.
What's that all about? I mean, we're talking about a species that's smart enough to travel through enormous distances in space, and then come to our country or to our world, to Earth, to make a crop circle.
Yes, I think
that's what they're missing in there.
Yeah. Well, I think most crop circles are made by people. Most, probably all, probably. But if any of them were made by aliens, we don't really know. I mean, I love it when people say, you know, oh, aliens wouldn't do that. And my response is always, how do you know what aliens would or wouldn't do? Maybe it is a message. Maybe it's a test. Maybe it's a Sudoku. Maybe it's graffiti.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
I got a little checklist about some common known conspiracies.
Wait, no, we're not at the conspiracy theories. We're coming there. I'm still at the UFOs.
Okay, if you're at the UFOs,
we'll come to the conspiracy theories in a minute, okay? I just want to confront you with a different person. Have you heard of Paul Hellyer?
Yes.
A Canadian, ex-Canadian, no, he's still Canadian, but he's ex-Ministry of Defense, who said that he knows of 4 alien races actively visiting Earth for like 1,000 years. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I have, and I've met Paul Hellyer on 2 or maybe 3 occasions and discussed this with him. Like you say, he's the former Defence Minister of Canada, former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada as well, the oldest surviving member of the Privy Council, I think. And clearly he's a hugely intelligent man. Now, I don't know where he's getting this information. I know he passionately believes this. I know that he's got a number of people that he talks to. Whether he is being told the truth, I don't know, because of course he has many contacts in government, military, intelligence, and I don't know who his sources are. But yes, when somebody like that turns around and says, this is real, it amazes me that the media doesn't put this on the front page of...
Exactly. It should be, everybody should be talking about it, but it's like, oh, he said it's 4 alien races, well, whatever, I go to...
I mean, this is a man of such political seniority. I mean, imagine if a former chancellor here turned round and said, we're being visited. It would be on all the TV stations, on the newspapers, and yet maybe people don't like Canadians or something. There's a bit of prejudice. I don't know.
Maybe Canadians, I can't believe them.
But yeah, it's a very big and important story.
And do you believe him? Do you think there are 4 alien races visiting the Earth?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I know there's a conspiracy theory that says that I know, and I'm covering it up because, of course, even though I left the government in 2006, there are conspiracy theories that say that I still secretly work for them and that I come on shows like this to be the friendly face and to get people used to the idea.
Okay.
It's not true. But
yeah, you couldn't say it's true if
no.
the conspiracy theory would actually be true.
That's true. But of course, that's back to the old problem that you can't really prove a negative.
Yeah, that's true. Now I don't know what to think of here. He's smiling. Okay, speaking of conspiracy theories, you're also an expert on that topic. Dennis, you had questions?
Yes. I got a little checklist about some things that are always coming up again. People talking about them. Are they true? Are they not? We talked about those crop circles. Can you give me a yes or no? Is this total crap, or is there a little bit truth in it?
No, I think
Okay.
I think they're
No
made by
crop
people.
circles.
People.
All
Sorry. I mean, I think they're beautiful, but I've seen people make them.
You should see the ones my friend makes. What about John F. Kennedy?
Well,
I think he was a president once.
Yeah?
that I think is almost marks the birth of the modern conspiracy theory era. And of course, we're just coming up to the 50th anniversary of his assassination. Many different people wanted him dead for many different reasons.
Which is kind of strange to celebrate an assassination, don't you think?
Yes.
Happy birthday assassination! Who says that?
I hope that there'll be respectful tributes.
Yes.
But clearly he had humiliated the Soviet Union in the Cuban Missile Crisis. And Lee Harvey Oswald, of course, had defected to Russia and then come back. So was he secretly recruited and sent back to do a mission by his KGB minders? I don't know. Fidel Castro, of course, hated him because he had ordered the invasion at the Bay of Pigs, and Castro knew that Kennedy had tried to have him killed and would probably try again. So did Castro try and strike back? The Cuban exiles, that's the funny thing, hated him for the same reason, that he failed with the invasion of Cuba. And they said, this was our one opportunity, and he messed it up. So they hated him. Some people in the CIA and the military-industrial complex didn't like the fact that he was maybe going to reach out and be more peaceful. Well,
But don't have all the presidents their enemies? Isn't that always the same?
And that's the point, I suppose. It's one thing to want someone dead. It's a very different thing to actually be able to do something about it, particularly when it's someone as well protected as the President of the United States. So very often, you know, with all these conspiracy theories, there's one rule that holds true. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. It's an old rule, actually, in many things, in science too, called Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the right explanation. So maybe, even though I've talked about a whole bunch of enemies, maybe it just was a lone gunman. And of course, sad to say, we see lone gunmen all the time, very often in America, of course, these people that go on terrible shooting rampages in schools, in cinemas, and just want to be famous. Well, what could make you more famous than assassinating the President of the United States? So maybe Lee Harvey Oswald really was the archetypal lone gunman.
Do you think there's a need for people to believe in conspiracy theories, especially when it comes to death of celebrities? Because you had conspiracy theories with Diana, you had it with John Lennon, you had it with Tupac and Notorious B.I.G., you had it with Elvis Presley. Almost every celebrity that dies before his age and was at his pinnacle of his time has a conspiracy.
Is this something to do with
psychology? Yes. Now, I should say, I think conspiracy theories, generally speaking, can be a good thing because they encourage us to maybe ask difficult questions of government. It encourages us maybe not to believe everything that the politicians tell us, and that's good. That's what every good investigative journalist should be doing. It's what all of us should be doing. We shouldn't just take everything we're told and believe it without question. But I think there is a danger in going too far the other way and constructing ridiculous theories that depend on a hugely unlikely chain of coincidence and motive. You mentioned one of my favorite conspiracy theories, actually, the death of Diana, Princess of Wales. To me, this is a ridiculous conspiracy theory. Looking at the facts, it is so simple to me. There was a car driving at high speed. The driver had been drinking, the road was a difficult one, and she wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Well, hello, how many people die like that on the roads of Germany, Britain, America, every day? It's a fatal combination. High speed, alcohol, no seatbelt.
But
there were
why
4
do people make something like that up?
Because, and I think this goes back to the point that you raised about psychology. I think people do look for some deeper meaning because they almost can't believe that one of the most famous and beautiful women in the world could have been killed in something so trivial as a car crash. And I think it's a basic psychology thing. When you have something big, you think it must have a big cause, a big effect, must have a big cause. So when a globally famous person dies young, you look for some deeper meaning. When the Twin Towers were destroyed with aircraft flying into them, you almost think, well, something else must have been responsible.
But how does that fit to like recently the Boston bombing that happened in Boston? There came up a conspiracy theory that it was like private security firms that were involved somehow, and pictures came up in the internet and with backpacks of the and. How do you explain that? Because you could just say, okay, there was a bombing and there isn't a greater thing behind it.
Well, I think Americans like this idea of a police state conspiracy. Many of the people who believe that 9/11 was an inside job think that the reason it was to allow the American government to bring in things like the Patriot Act, to clamp down on personal freedoms.
Isn't that true?
Well, it was the effect, but you can't deny that the Patriot Act happened and that some personal freedoms have been limited and replaced with more intrusive surveillance. And of course, it's very much in the news with the NSA, with PRISM, with Edward Snowden. But I think, to go back to your question, the answer to all of this is the internet itself. The internet plays a huge part in spreading these conspiracy theories and rumors far quicker than was ever the case beforehand. And it's no accident, I think, that many conspiracy theories, I mean, before the internet, we had JFK, we had the moon landing, but after the internet, yeah, almost every bomb or premature death of a celebrity turns into some conspiracy theory, and I think it's because it's so easy for these rumors, and that's what most of them are, to spread on the internet. And someone notices something, hey, look at this guy wearing dark glasses and with an earpiece, maybe he's secretly working for the government, and a lot of people think that things like the Boston bombing are part of an ongoing campaign to make people so scared that they will accept CCTV cameras on every street corner, tanks on the street. But I go back to the point, yeah, that happened, but was it planned by the government so that they could do things, or did they just react and think we'd better deploy these police forces and see if we can lock everything down and maybe prevent it happening again?
I think you're not anymore working for the Ministry of Defense right now, but you know really much about this, this stuff. I wonder, what was your work day looking like? We know the Ministry of Defense only from Hollywood movies or something, and those agents and all this stuff we don't know about, but you were really there. How does it really look like? Are you in a room, all these flat screens and all this confidential information everywhere, or how does it look in reality?
Well, I think you're right. Some people imagine it's a cross between James Bond movies, The X-Files, Spooks, something like that. But the reality, well, yes, there's a lot of very highly classified information, of course. It's a naturally secretive organization, and we did some very interesting things that affected defense, national security, international relations, politics, but the reality is not quite like Hollywood.
You don't wear black glasses all day and go by helicopter?
You come in the morning and the first thing you do is make yourself a cup of coffee.
I'm not sure, because tell that Eric Snowden, like 2 months ago I would have maybe would have agreed with you, but now with all this whistleblowing going on, I think that, and that's just like the tip of the iceberg. This is just one guy who said I'm leaking the information I have, but who knows what else is going on that we will never ever hear of. So it's more than just drinking coffee in the morning.
The Snowden incident. Do you think it's a good thing that people know this stuff that's going?
He lives in America. What's he supposed to say?
No,
shoot him outside.
I don't actually agree with that. I think there is a place for whistleblowing in a modern democratic society, but you can't just release a whole lot of classified information. I mean, look, if he had done the same thing and delivered it to the embassy of Russia or China or Iran, people would be screaming that he's a traitor. But yet, in a sense, that's exactly what he did, because the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, everyone now has this information. I mean, classified information is classified for a good reason. Look, it's a lot of effort to classify information and to keep secrets. It's much easier to have unclassified papers. So there's a good reason why we do it. And that reason is because there is a sliding scale of confidential, secret, top secret, and release of this information often causes great damage to the national interest. I mean, I've seen, for example, on WikiLeaks things, and I'm not going to say what, but which could get people killed. So yes, there is a role for the whistleblower, but you can't just dump secrets into the public and by definition, therefore, to countries that are not friendly, and expect not to be punished.
Do you think he leaked all those informations because he really wants the world to know and to believe in the better course, or do you think that he just wanted the attention and wanted to be a celebrity kind of figure in the history of the world?
I don't know. When I look at these people like Edward Snowden, Julian Assange,
right?
well, Julian Assange comes to mind,
Yeah, exactly.
Bradley Manning. I don't know. I think it's a mixture. Some of it is undoubtedly a bit of narcissism, wanting to maybe be someone. Some of it, I'm sure, is well-intentioned. Maybe, I'm not saying these people don't believe that the government, the state, has become too powerful, and this is their way of maybe fighting back. I think it's the wrong way, but I don't think it's as simple as either they're attention seekers or they are martyrs and have a cause. I think maybe it's a whole mixture of that.
What do you think are the, if they ever catch him, what are the consequences?
They will, I'm sure, charge him with unauthorized disclosure of classified information. We see with what's going on with Bradley Manning what might happen, and if he's found guilty, and of course that's not up to the government, that's up to the legal process, but if he's found guilty, I would think that he would receive a long prison sentence, because judges, when you look at previous cases where people have leaked classified information, particularly if they've been spies, say for the Russians or the Chinese, they can go to prison for a very long time. So
if Eric Snowden has like a car crash anytime soon, I'm sensing a conspiracy theory.
Yes, and you see that's the interesting point about that. Because if he was in a car crash, everyone would immediately think that the American government had did it. In a sense, the last thing the American government want is for anything to happen to him. They're desperately hoping that he doesn't have an accident, because in a sense, this is the irony of many conspiracy theories. Killing someone, you know, people say, conspiracy theorists believe that the government goes around, like in James Bond movies, killing its enemies. Well, no. If you do that, you draw far more attention to their cause than if you had just either ignored them or just pursued them through the courts. I mean, you know, killing someone would make them a martyr and would give 10 times more publicity to their claims than they would ever get otherwise. So governments simply wouldn't do it. I know people don't agree with me on that, but we really don't go around shooting people because we don't like what they're doing.
I got another big conspiracy theory on my list, and that's the moon landing. Did it really happen, or is there something made up?
There was still nobody on the moon.
No? What do you say?
I am a passionate believer that we did go to the moon. Firstly, those were pretty big rockets, and everyone saw the astronauts get in them and go up. So where did they go? Okay, let me be more serious than that. Couple of things I think prove beyond all reasonable doubt that we went. Firstly, the moon rocks that have been brought back and which have been examined by scientists all around the world have been found to be fundamentally different from any rocks found on Earth because they are exposed to more cosmic radiation. We're protected by our atmosphere. So the rocks, you can tell that they didn't come from Earth. So that's one reason. Another reason is that one of the moon missions, they basically left on the surface of the moon a large mirror, a reflector. And this was so that anyone, scientists, even pretty much a big school project, could fire a laser beam at this reflector. It would bounce back, and then you would be able to measure to the exact millimeter the distance from the Earth to the moon.
Never heard about that.
It's called the laser ranging reflector or something like that. But basically, of course, this wouldn't work. The laser beam wouldn't bounce back if they hadn't gone up there and put this mirror there. And yet, lots of different scientists in many different countries have done this.
So we've been to the moon.
We've been to the moon. The other thing is that now our telescopes are just about getting powerful enough that we can see things like the lunar landing modules, the things that we did leave up there. Now, okay, I accept that obviously conspiracy theorists will say, well, if NASA faked the moon landings, they're faking the photos of the landing module and things. But I think we've been. The other thing is, I've met one of the only 12 people to have walked on the surface of the moon, Dr. Edgar Mitchell. And, you know, he's like all the astronauts. These are men of great honor and bravery and integrity. I mean, you know, they knew that there was a very real chance they wouldn't come back. These are not people who are given to telling lies. These, you know, so we have been to the moon.
Would you agree? It's safe to say that the world is much more boring than we hope it is?
No, I think the world's more interesting. I mean, depends what you mean.
I don't know what I mean.
Conspiracy theories are interesting, and it would probably be a more boring world without them. On the other hand, it would be a much more boring world if we hadn't gone to the moon. So, you know, yeah, you can argue it round either way, I think.
Have you ever had some evidence in your hand that was so big and so secret and something you didn't expect? Like, did you ever have some like unknown material from a crash site which maybe after a couple of months was like only pretty normal material, but at first sight was for you really interesting? Did you have such a moment where you thought, this conspiracy theory might be true?
Well, one time I got some photographs of a UFO that had been taken in Scotland in 1990. And we had these photographs and the negatives examined by scientists in the Defense Intelligence Staff, technical experts in the Air Force who were experts in imagery analysis. And they said these photos are not fakes, they're real. They show a solid craft, diamond-shaped, silver in color, kind of apparently hovering above the ground and either being chased or being escorted by military jets. So we investigated. We weren't able to trace the jets, which was bizarre. I mean, if the Ministry of Defense is unable to locate the aircraft, you know something is very, very strange. Recently, you may have heard the British government finished a 5-year program to declassify and release its entire archive of UFO files, 50,000 or more individual documents. These photographs, which everyone was looking forward to seeing, have disappeared. The Ministry of Defense says that no trace can be found of them. They have been lost. Also, some intelligence files on the Bentwaters case that we discussed. It turned out that the Ministry of Defense said they seem to have been accidentally destroyed. So there are some conspiracy theories there, yes.
I mean, so there are some theories you still have kind of open for yourself, which you didn't close and say, okay, this is true.
But it's only pictures. It's only pictures. You haven't seen
a picture of a UFO, man.
Yeah, it's a picture of a UFO. I've seen movies about UFOs. So
but
yeah, you've seen movies.
I've seen Independence Day.
But no, to answer your question, I haven't had in my hand alien technology.
And you know why? I know why. Because, and there I'm back again at my theory about what our imagination is about alien races. I'm still, honestly, I believe there are aliens, but I don't think they come in UFOs and in something shaped like something we know. It could be like biological things. It could be like a chemical thing. I don't know what it is, but we always think of aliens like humanoid forms, and they always use technology that is kind of similar to what we use. Maybe they have better spaceships, which is nothing else than a plane, just better with better technology. But it could be like, I don't know, an insect or something.
Yes, or many people have speculated that obviously we are carbon-based life forms. People have speculated that extraterrestrials might be silicon-based life forms and fundamentally different. I think it's back to the problem that we are only capable of taking an anthropocentric view of this and thinking in human terms. But yes, what you've said is possible. Some people believe that alien life may be so strange and different that it may already be here and that we wouldn't recognize it for what it is, we wouldn't be aware of it. Many other people think that we may be dealing with machine intelligence. That's something that I hear a lot about. But that raises wider questions about the nature of consciousness. These are almost philosophical questions sometimes.
Speaking of which, are you a religious person?
No. Despite the fact that my surname is Pope, not at all.
Because that would be like the biggest conspiracy theory that I know of is, of course, the Bible.
Well, there's that great line in the movie, no, wait, which movie is it? Minority Report, that's
yes.
it. And where they say, the power has always been with the priests, even when they had to invent the oracle. Mm-hmm. Well, you can get into a whole conspiracy theory about religion as an instrument of social control. You know, since the dawn of time in tribal societies, the two important people were the chief and the shaman. Well, it was the shaman that was the link, I suppose, with the spirit world. You know, and I mean, religion is certainly, I think, subject of many conspiracy theories. People think, I mean, obviously the popularity of someone like Dan Brown and the Da Vinci Code has taken us into some interesting speculation. Many people believe that hidden in the Vatican archives are all sorts of mysterious things, who knows what. There's a very interesting question. A lot of people say, what would be the effect of aliens coming to Earth on people's religious beliefs? Some people believe that that is one of the reasons why this would be covered up, because it might destroy people's faith in their religion. I don't know.
You were talking about Minority Report. We all love science fiction. Do you look science fiction movies? Do you like them? Do you have any favorites? Do you look Star Trek or Star Wars, something like that?
Oh, yes. And in fact, I have written a couple of science fiction novels myself.
Oh, what's the name?
Is this the one, the Operation Lightning Strike and
yes.
Thunderchild?
Yes.
You have Operation nice names for your
yes.
books.
Well, Operation Thunderchild, which was, of course, a reference to the Thunderchild, the ship in H.G. Wells' original novel, The War of the Worlds, the Navy ship that manages to fight back against the Martian fighting machines. So that was my little sci-fi tribute to H.G. Wells. But yes, I was brought up reading things like The War of the Worlds, The Time Machine, so H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, Asimov. Then I discovered Star Trek. Then I discovered Doctor Who. I love lots of sci-fi movies and TV series, The X-Files, you know, which we discussed that I'd done some work in a consultancy role on that. I love the movie Contact, which is probably my favorite
I like it
movie.
with Jodie Foster.
Yes.
The 3-hour movie, where at the end it's just her father,
Yes.
no aliens.
Yes.
Oh, I hate that.
I thought it's pretty good. I like it.
I think maybe that goes back, in a sense, to some of the things that we've discussed, because I think what's interesting about that movie is that, yes, it's about aliens, but actually it is more about us and how we would react. It's about belief and faith and science and religion, and it's based on a book by Carl Sagan, who was an astronomer and thought very deeply about these issues. And there's some good science behind that science fiction movie. I mean, people really are using telescopes like that to listen for signals from space. And some people are using telescopes to send messages. And of course, there's big controversy about that. People like Stephen Hawking say, hey, wait a minute, we shouldn't be trying to draw our attention in this way, because it may not be clever. We may encounter civilizations that are more advanced than us and might not be friendly.
I have some questions left. So since we have you here, I want to use the occasion to get these questions answered. First off, what's the meaning of life? I mean, I'm sure
it's 42.
It's 42.
Everyone knows.
No, everyone knows. It's true. How big is the universe, actually? So could you give us, or let's start with a maybe easier question. How did it all start? I mean, something can't exist without something existing. There can't be just a Big Bang without nothing that makes a Big Bang.
Well, seeing as it wasn't space, but it was space-time that was created in the Big Bang, the word before becomes meaningless, because before presupposes that time existed, which it didn't. But I think fundamentally our human minds are almost literally incapable of understanding concepts like infinity, which is, I think, the answer to your question about how big the universe is, and the singularity of the Big Bang, or indeed a black hole. I mean, we just can't conceive of the fact that before the Big Bang there wasn't nothing, there was no before.
But what does that tell us about us as living beings? I mean, if we know we don't know everything, or we can't understand certain things, does it even make sense to try? I don't know. I mean, you guys just talked about flying to the moon. How ridiculous is that? If we can't even imagine, you know, if you're saying we're not capable of imagine what infinity is, why do we discuss about the moon? I mean,
well, I think it would be a very boring world if we did all know everything. I think there are always going to be unknown unknowns and known unknowns. And mysteries are, I think, fun. But also, it's important for human development, for scientific and technical advancement. As long as there are still questions out there that we don't know the answer to, as long as there are mysteries of the universe to probe, we will go on maybe trying to improve ourselves and push ourselves. The day that we think, okay, we've solved everything, that will be the end of the human race. The decline and fall of the human race will come on that day. So we should always have things to try and find out. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
If I give you 3 possibilities for the future, which one would you say would be the most realistically to happen? That we encounter aliens, or that we get the technology to cross the boundaries of our solar system, or do we extinct ourselves? Which of the 3 is the most realistic one?
That's a good question.
Well, I think we'll encounter, but I suppose you could have one and two.
Yeah, but which one would encounter
what,
first?
do you mean us finding them or them finding us?
Them finding us, because us finding them would be like crossing our borders.
Well, we might find, though, what about not intelligent life, but we might find microbes on Mars next week. And many people believe that we will do that. But I suppose really we're talking about other civilizations.
Yes.
I think it's more likely that they will find us. The reason I say that is because in a universe 14 billion years old, give or take a few years, if the universe is teeming with life, as I think it should be, because the laws of physics seem to be constant and the laws of chemistry should again give rise to life elsewhere. I think in all of that, it's extremely unlikely that we will be the very first civilization to emerge to a point that we crack the secret of viable interstellar travel, whether it's warping space-time, using wormholes, or finding some other workaround to the apparent barrier of the speed of light. I think it's very statistically unlikely that we would be the very first, or even the second, the third. So that being the case, I think there are going to be lots of civilizations out there more advanced than us. Lots, you know, less too. I think we're probably somewhere in the middle, just laws of statistical probability. But that being the case, if there are these advanced ones out there, it's more likely someone's going to find us before we find someone else.
I want to go to those there that are below us, because I could go there and I'd be like a god.
Well, and of course, a lot of people say it would be a bad thing if that happened, because all the terrible things that we've done when a technologically more advanced civilization on Earth has encountered a less technologically advanced civilization. We've either enslaved them, we've slaughtered them.
It's true.
Even if we haven't meant to, sometimes our germs have proved fatal.
But I was just talking about me, not us as a whole. Just me. I'm going there to the stupid planet where everybody's pretty stupid and I'm the smartest guy, and you can go to the super smart people who feel dumb all day.
You could be a god, you could be a king.
Exactly.
They would build a big statue.
You just have to go far enough so people are so stupid to believe you're a god. That's. I think I have a goal now in my life. Before we come to an end of this great conversation, prior to the show, I asked our viewers via Twitter if they have questions for you. So I would like to throw a couple of them at you. I don't know if they're smart or stupid, but I couldn't be any stupider than mine, so I'd just try. Here's a question from Polygonian, which how it was to work with the X-Files. Well,
it was great. I very much enjoyed my time on the British government's UFO project. No 2 days were the same. And every time the phone rang, you never knew whether it was just going to be a boring report of what was going to turn out to be aircraft lights near an airport, or whether you would get another case like Roswell or the Rendlesham Forest incident, the Bentwaters incident. So yeah, it wasn't quite like Mulder and Scully. We didn't have guns, we didn't have big torches and run around in dark warehouses, but we had some interesting times.
Okay. Here's a question from Daniel Nano 666. He asks, and he means, I don't know what it is, did UFOs had something to do with what happened at the Gorman farm in the USA? I don't know, do you know what the Gorman farm is?
I'm not sure I do, actually.
Okay. Me neither, maybe.
So I was going to say, I can't recall every single case.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. I don't know what it is either. So
I've got the last question too. If I'm going to buy stocks tomorrow, stocks of conspiracy theories, which one would you recommend? Because we learned today moon landing is not a very good conspiracy theory, like also the Diana conspiracy theory. But which one, in your view, is the most profound?
Well, it might just turn out to be the alien one, because like I say, we discussed a couple of good reasons why governments might want to keep it secret, to develop the technology for themselves. So if you've got to put money on one conspiracy theory, not the moon landing, not Diana, not 9/11, yeah, go for UFOs, why not?
All right. I have a good question from Laura Kraus. She wants to know if you think if it's really possible to build a Death Star.
Oh, yes.
If you get the money.
Yes.
I can do it.
Or something like the Death Star.
We can build and put into space a satellite. Arguably, the Death Star is just a very, very big satellite. So it would be expensive and it would be difficult, but ultimately it is not something which is scientifically impossible to do. And we do have lasers and other directed energy weapons. We have nuclear weapons, which are pretty dangerous. So yes. Now, I think somebody asked the White House that same question, and I think their answer was something like, well, maybe one day, but there are probably better things to spend money on. So, yeah, I think that's my answer too.
Dennis S., what a stupid name, Dennis, wants to know, how do you become a UFO expert?
Well, I became one, I suppose, quite by accident. I had no interest in this subject. I was just assigned as a government job. My expertise, I suppose, were that I was an analyst of information, and I suppose after I spent 3 years researching and investigating UFOs, the 200 or 300 cases that came in every year, plus reading all the tens of thousands of pages of documents in the archive, I suppose that's how I gradually built up a body of knowledge on this subject. But yeah, I was, as we said at an early point in the interview, I was pretty skeptical before I came that job. I liked sci-fi, but I didn't for a moment think that any of it was maybe going to turn out to be real.
Okay. So maybe that's a good thing, to be skeptical in the first place and then like work yourself into it.
Yes, I think so. If I had gone in believing everything, I would not have been so critical in my investigations and so skeptical and saying, well, wait a minute, that sounds as if it could be a weather balloon, an airship, a meteor. That looks like a hoax photo to me.
Yeah. PZ86 asks, what do you know of Erik von Däniken?
Yes.
And what do you think about his theories?
Well, he's certainly done some fantastic work to, I suppose, make us question some of the things in our own past. And I mean, his book, Chariots of the Gods, is a true classic. But you know, I've met Erik on a couple of occasions, and he always reminds people that his book, Chariot of the Gods, has a question mark at the end. So he's not saying to people necessarily it was aliens, but he's saying, you know, maybe some of these mysteries in the past, maybe if we talk about gods living in the sky, maybe we need to say, maybe that's not literal gods, but maybe it's just extraterrestrials. After all, there's an old Arthur C. Clarke quote that says, any technology sufficiently advanced from our own will be indistinguishable from magic. So did ancient humans encounter extraterrestrials but think they were gods and then write about them, build statues of them, draw pictures of them? Eric von Daniken has some interesting ideas, and I suppose with modern TV shows like Ancient Aliens, those ideas are maybe popular again.
Which leads to a perfect final question from Mitty the Koala. Did aliens build the pyramids?
No, I don't think they did.
Just like that?
Yeah, I think sometimes there is a danger of underestimating actually how smart some of our ancestors were. The Egyptians, for example, were highly skilled in mathematics, geometry, astronomy, engineering, and because the pharaonic society was a very effective dictatorship, the pharaohs and the priests could bring to bear on this project almost the entire resources of the state. And so, yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying I think the ancient Egyptians
They were capable
built the pyramids. And the other thing is, yeah, I'm sure it would be interesting if aliens built the pyramids, but there would be something a bit depressing about that. Wouldn't it be better to believe that human beings are pretty smart and wonderful and we're capable of doing that?
What about Stonehenge?
Same thing, but on a smaller scale.
Easter Island.
Same thing.
Statue of Liberty. Come on. Golden Gate Bridge.
Aliens.
There we have it. That's a final conclusion. Mr. Pope, it was a pleasure to have you on our show. Time is up. We could speak for hours. I could literally confront you with 100 of more questions, but it's so interesting to talk to you. So if you ever come again to Germany, you're always welcome in our show.
Thank you.
Maybe you have witnessed some new stuff by then.
I hope so.
And maybe you can show it to us.
Yeah, maybe you can upgrade our security clearance a little bit by a couple of levels, maybe level black or something.
We talk about that like after the cameras are off. Right?
Above top secret.
Exactly, above top secret, exactly. It was great to have you here, and I think we learned quite a lot.
Yeah.
Was very interesting. Thanks for being here. Das war's mit Almost Daily mit Nick Pope. Es war ganz fantastisch. Ich hätte noch Stunden weiterreden können, aber wir müssen den guten Mann jetzt auch mal in Ruhe lassen. So, das war's. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Nächstes Mal gibt es dann wieder richtig anspruchsvolle Themen wie Zähneputzen oder so. Tschüss. Ciao.